Hi, and thanks for joining the webinar. So let's get ready to homeschool. This is part of the Google Advantage for Homeschoolers series. You can register at this link below for additional parent classes. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Jennifer Collins. I have worked 21 years in the classroom, but on the side, I also provide curriculum for homeschool families, and I've homeschooled my own children. I established K-12O in 2009. It's a nonprofit organization that provides resources to homeschool families. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you today. So you're considering homeschool. So let's go over the pros and cons first. So the pros, of course, you're going to have greater freedom and more flexibility and more family time and less stress of rushing around in the morning and trying to get to school on time and things like that. No homework and the ability to travel more as a family. So the cons are, of course, loss of income. Usually one of the parents will have to stay home to teach. Curriculum can be expensive, and students have a smaller circle of friends. This link is really great to go over some of the pros and cons on the Calvert Education website. And you will get this slideshow when we're finished today, so don't worry about having to write anything down. Roll down to the bottom. So the homeschooling fact is that more family time is spent on homeschooling. You got this rewarding family time. So of course the pros is you have a direct role in what your child is learning and what they're developing. And then the satisfaction that you taught them this, of course. Some of the cons, of course, are going to be you've got to do a lot of planning and you have less time during the day for you. And it could be more stress if you're not really organization's not your thing. And it could, you're going to be tired. But of course, the rewarding part is that you had more family time together. Another homeschooling fact is that more money is going to have to go into homeschooling instead of, free curriculum that's coming from the school system. The pros are you can use vacations and activities and count that as homeschool time. You can purchase bundled curriculum. One of the cons, though, is that it may mean a loss of income because one parent is staying home. You may have to tighten up your family spending. Team sports are going to change. You can now play in amateur leagues and different local homeschool sports. You have more options now during the day. When I homeschooled my daughter, she took ballroom dancing classes during the day. So you just need to look into local co-ops and some of the options. The con is that most school districts, a lot of them are coming around now and allowing homeschoolers to participate, but that is not 100% for every state. Another homeschool fact is a different path of socialization for students. So it's going to be, of course, the pro of less bullying and ridiculing and things like that, less exposure to COVID and different connections, but you can get that same connection from local co-ops, and maybe you can make your own homeschool group in the area. Another fact is that educational freedom and flexibility come into play when you're homeschooling. So the child can move quickly through assignments and subjects and move on to the next grade level if they wanted to. Of course, there's no homework. All the students will be super happy with that. You can pursue what interests them the most. One of the cons is going to be that you have fewer resources at your fingertips regarding technology. So I know when my children were in the school system, they had a Chromebook that had, Word and iExcel and MobiMax and Nearpod and all those great programs already programmed in. Those will be things that you may want to look into purchasing. So that will be fewer resources that you have. Less structure is a con, and some students really need that structure for their learning. Homeschooling fact, recognition of achievement. Now, if your students love language, is recognition that may be something you want to think about. They're going to have fewer award ceremonies that were commonly done in the public school system. But again, you can do things with your family and your extended family to recognize them instead. One of the pros, though, is there's going to be less distraction from students who really don't value learning, they're not having to observe other students that are cutting up in class and things like that. The last homeschooling fact is that more time for community involvement. So there's going to be less distraction. They're going to be able to also take pride in their achievements. So in a classroom, we may ask a child, okay, why don't you draw out the solar system and label all the planets? Well, in a classroom, they're truly going, after the lesson's done, they're going to have around 15 minutes to complete it. So a lot of time, the work they're handing in, they're not really proud of. They just quickly did it fast for the grade. So they're going to feel more responsible for what they're creating at home, and they have more time and it's just more joy out of it. All right, let's go back to our slideshow. Common reasons that families decide to homeschool. So bullying may be at play, just a general dislike for the teacher, learning needs not being met, or maybe your family has just decided they're going to travel. So let's dig into the specifics. How are we going to begin this journey? Let's get started. How do I withdraw my child from the school system? Well, most school systems and state education websites have a withdrawal form online. So first of all, you're going to go to that website and fill out the form. You can also send a withdrawal notice to the school to avoid any truancy charges or anything like that. Now, some states are different. So you're going to need to look online for what your state requires. But in Texas, they require that you send a withdrawal letter via certified mail to the school, letting them know that you're withdrawing them. So you do need to look at what your state requires. So we're going to just do a practice scenario. So I am from Georgia, so I'm familiar with this website the most. So here is the Georgia Department of Education website, but of course, go to your state website. Click this link. And we'll see here in Georgia, we have the Dexter Act, and this is allowing homeschool students to participate in various extracurricular activities. Scroll down. It is called a declaration of intent. Click here. And our form in Georgia is very, very simple. You just put the student's name, the age of the student, the school year, like when you're going to start, and then your signature, and then you just hit submit. And from that day on, you have 30 days to start your homeschooling program. Get the records from the school. This is super important. You need to have their attendance records, their immunization reports if you don't have them at home. You need to have a file for your child. And I know this is a point where you may feel, oh, I want to contact the school. They're going to be really mad at me for pulling my child out. Don't feel that way, especially right now with COVID. There is a lot of withdrawals going on. So just kindly call them up and say, look, we've made a decision as a family. We'd like to homeschool. What do I need to do? And you can go ahead and tell them you filled out your intent form and just see the next steps. Naming your homeschool. This is usually a big surprise. In some states, they do require you to name your homeschool. Georgia does not at this time, but they did 5 years ago. So it kind of changes. This name does not have to be difficult. It can be unique or it can be very simple, like the Smith Academy. I would hesitate in naming a program something silly or funny because you're going to put that on the transcripts that may possibly go to college. Okay. Let's decide that we're going to set up a system for your records. So some states are very, very strict about homeschooling. And if you're divorced and you're the one managing the child's education, it's a good idea to always keep records. So this can be a simple calendar where you're just putting a check mark for each day they are homeschooled. List field trips and important days or days they were sick and you didn't homeschool, but you do need to have some type of records. What days are needed in the school year? So a school year is 180 school days. So you need to pick which 180 days you're going to have in a year. If you want to count a Saturday, count a Saturday. If you want to count a Sunday, count a Sunday. You want to teach in the summer, teach in the summer. You can break it apart, but you need to have 180 checks on that calendar. A typical school day is 4.5 hours. Of course, that is going to be different for everyone's homeschool program. There is no hour police that's going to be checking on it, but what is most important is that you have 180 school days. So you need to create a dedicated homeschool area, and you can look on Pinterest and find the cutest little areas that people have created. But I would recommend decorating the area together so it feels like a special place so that you have a common goal. This is our area. We're going to get out of our bedroom. We're going to come in here and together we're going to have school. And then it just structures the day a little bit better. Some must-haves. This is a really great link for must-haves. They have the top printers currently, the top-rated Chromebooks for students and iPads, and then great deals on spirals and note cards. And if you want to have a planner, things like that. So homeschool routines. So just like adults, children feel more confident and secure if their day is predictable. And I've watched a lot of videos, but this one I think is my favorite. So I'll leave that on the slideshow for you. But you can imagine if your work day was changed up, you just don't feel as productive. So if they know, okay, every day we're going to start at 9 a.m. Every day we're going to start at 10 a.m. They know what to expect and they kind of have a common goal. All right, and then we're going to get done by this period. So we understand that there's on average 4 to 5 hours a day, but that's really depending on the age of your child. And so I've had parents ask me, okay, my child is 4 and I want to begin homeschooling. How long do I need to homeschool? Well, you know, for a child that young, it's really going to be up to you. A child doesn't have to begin entering the school system until the age of 7 now. So any child that's younger, that's really truly up to you. It could be an hour a day, it could be 30 minutes a day. But just realize that a school day is going to involve changing from class to class, snack time, lunchtime, recess. So your homeschool day is going to be shorter, of course, than a regular school day. Here is a typical elementary schedule on a school campus. You see they're starting around 8:15 and they're ending around 2:30. Here's a typical elementary schedule for homeschoolers. They're beginning around 8 o'clock. They're having about 10 minutes in the morning for maybe you want to talk about the weather or pledges, if you want to do prayer. And then they begin reading. Typically, we begin reading at the beginning of the day for elementary students. And these may be online books that are read aloud, or maybe you're reading together or you're reading to them like a teacher circle time. And then you'll notice that the rest of the classes are about 30 minutes apiece. That's completely up to you, but that is just in general the format that most elementary schools follow. A common method for the electives is to do something called camp, where C's for computers and computers, it's very, very important if you're homeschooling to make sure that you're working technology into your program. Your child can go to typing.com. It's a free program and learn how to type. A for art, M for music, and then P for physical education, PE. So for example, they might start camp on Monday and say, you know, Monday we're going to do computers, and then Tuesday we're going to do art. We just kind of rotate it. That's one option, but again, it's up to you. 80% of homeschool families only have class Monday through Thursday. That gives you a time off on Friday or maybe just a field trip day. Social studies and science. In the elementary school, kindergarten through second grade, they usually rotate their social studies. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention. Usually maybe science is just Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and history is Tuesday, Thursday. But also you can, the first and second semester, you could do science, and the third and fourth semester, you could do history. So you could break it apart. It's important when the child enters third grade that they have a stronger basic knowledge of science and history. So that's why in third grade, they no longer rotate. They're taking them both each day. Here's an example of a typical middle school schedule on a school campus. As you can see, it is very stressful looking. They are trying to move those kids around and not have so many students in the hall at the same time. But on average, a middle school day is 45 minutes. I mean, for each class is 45 minutes. Here's a sample homeschool middle school schedule. And I started this day at 9 a.m. And you'll see each one goes just 45 minutes. And there's about a 15-minute break before they start the next class. That is very helpful for middle schoolers. It's kind of hard for them to transition quickly. And so it allows them a little bit of downtime to finish whatever they're working on. Maybe they need a snack. Maybe they need to stand up. In the school system, they call it brain break, where they may stand up and do a couple jumping jacks or a little dance or recite something funny, but just to give them some downtime, just to stretch out. Most middle schools rotate their electives every 9 weeks. And they also do the rotation of maybe Spanish Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and music Tuesday, Thursday. So they don't have the same elective every day. Middle school elective ideas. So your child, if they are really into sports, you can look into the YMCA or maybe another community club. PE can just be walking or just getting outside and exercising. Home economics can be cooking dinner or sewing or home skills. If your child plays an instrument, that practice time can count as a music class. I heard a story of a group of students in a subdivision that were all homeschooled, and they decided to get together and walk twice a week for PE. So you can be very creative at what you want to do for your electives. If you haven't discovered Outschool, I highly recommend Outschool. I actually teach a few classes on there also, but it is great for homeschool students, just for socialization too. They offer one-time classes, and then they also offer core classes. So if you don't feel comfortable teaching a math class, you can find an actual math teacher on Outschool that will teach math every day or several times a week. They just rolled out groups, which are really great. It's kind of hard to find the groups on the Outschool website, but if you go to the search bar and click filters, you'll see it there. And groups could be anything that interests the student. Maybe it's space. And so they could have writing prompts. So they'll go to the Outschool once a week, and it will give them a prompt. Okay, this week we're going to learn about this, or we're going to research this, or write about this, write a paragraph and then submit your story. And it gives students just an outlet. And then the teacher will moderate the program, making sure the comments are positive and things like that. They also offer social time, which is really fun for the kindergarten and first graders, where they may just log in early in the morning, and with a large group, they'll have like an announcement time or show and tell and things like that. So it's really great. Here is my referral link. Outschool is allowing teachers to share a link out, and so you get $20 for free on Outschool to use on any class you want. It's not my classes. It could be anything. But of course, we do get, I don't want to hide that, we do get a referral credit for it, sharing out our link also. but $20 would probably get you about 2 classes. Most classes are around $7 to $8. All right, let's get back to our schedule. So here's sample high school schedule, starting around 9. You know our high schoolers like to sleep in. And these are 45-minute periods also. I would highly recommend looking into dual enrollment. If your child is a 9th grader all the way up to 12th grade, actually, dual enrollment just really means free college classes, and it counts as high school and college credits. So my daughter participated in dual enrollment. I was very pleased with the program. And what she did was in 10th grade, we looked at a local college, their website, and it had the requirements for dual enrollment. And she took, we use Burnell Academy and Burnell University now. And so she took History 101, just the basic history that you take when you enter college. It counted at the college level, and it counted as her history credits at the high school. So she was able to get done with high school 2 years ahead of time. So it was really great. And of course, gets free college classes. So can't get any better than that. And a lot of the classes are online. So you just need to research your local colleges in your area for their requirements. Here are 3 of my top schedule template links that I love to have a schedule that we're going to go through each day, and I like to post it for children to see. So I highly recommend these if you are a person that really loves having templates. So what is unschooling? Let's talk about that. Unschooling is a style of home education that allows the students' interests and curiosities to drive their path of learning. So they're saying, this interests me a lot. Let's research it a little bit more. That's really what truly unschooling is. So the difference between homeschooling and unschooling is the approach. So in homeschooling, the parent is acting like the teacher and saying, okay, this is what we're going to cover today. But in unschooling approach, the child is waking up and saying, I am really interested in learning about how flowers help bees, whatever it is. And then you then help lead them in the right direction to research it a little bit further. Does rejecting a formal curriculum cause knowledge gaps? And so that is a big question. A lot of times, homeschool parents will be very upset because their friends are not supportive of them homeschooling, and they think they're just going to play all day. And unschooling, just not understanding what unschooling is kind of opened this up. So many people think that unschooling is just rejecting any kind of schooling. We're not going to do anything. We're mad at the school system. And here we are, we're at home. We're going to enjoy our time together and play. And really, that's just a misunderstanding of what the unschooling approach is truly. If the program unschooling interests you, the top link that I think is the most helpful is this Unschooling Mom link, and I'll left it right there for you. But it doesn't mean that school is truly avoided and nothing is taught. It just means the focus is different, and it really depends on the interest of the child. Now, I'm mentioning this in the slideshow because there are many, many Facebook groups that will steer you in the wrong way. And so they will be unschooling groups or parents that are just kind of confused on what unschooling is. And they will explain to you that, you need to break apart from standards of school and schooling in general and just no school approach. And that's what it is. But truly the unschooling concept was not really developed for that. There's just a misunderstanding. So you really just need to do your homework on what fits best for your family. So let's look at the homeschool options. So you have the virtual option from the school system. And many schools right now, because of COVID, have this option where the child has everything they need on a school Chromebook that is provided. And you really are just there as a helper if needed for homework and things like that. And they may have Zoom times they need to log in. That's one option. other option is the parents are going to pick the curriculum. And this could be full curriculum programs. You could go to websites like Time for Learning that has everything that you need for the full year. Or maybe you're going to pick curriculum to purchase from various different companies. Accreditation, that is another worry of parents. Accreditation truly means that as a company, you have paid another company to say you're accredited. So you're asking this other company to say, yes, they do provide homeschooling services for this grade level. That's the majority of it. So the cost is around $1,000 to $5,000 a year. So most homeschool companies are not accredited because of that. Now, a lot of schools are not accredited either. So I think that parents are kind of confused on what the word accreditation means. It just means that you're asking another company just to verify you are what you are. And that's not really needed for online curriculum. Maybe a boarding school or a private school or something like that you're sending your child, you want to make sure. But I think at this time period in life, that's accreditation is kind of going away. So it is not required, and it does not prevent a child from going to college. That is the other misunderstanding. What would prevent them is not having any records that, yes, in 10th grade, we did this, and in 11th grade, we did this at home. So what are standards? And this is something really dear to my heart because I have a teacher background being in the school system. And so a lot of times parents will say, all right, pulling my child out, I'm going to homeschool them. What should I teach them? And they really don't have a starting place. And so that's where standards come into place. So standards are really just saying, okay, for this grade level, you're going to teach this. And so this was where we call them Common Core state standards come into place. And everybody hears the word Common Core and kind of shuts down. So hold on. I'm going to get to what Common Core is in just a second. But just know that standards mean that you're mastering a skill that you would need later. Each subject and each grade level has a set of standards. So when a homeschooler goes back in the school system, and sometimes that happens, they will have to take a placement test and they will be tested over the standards in order to place them in the correct place. So for example, if your child was supposed to take algebra in 7th grade and it's 8th grade now, and they're going back into the school system, they're going to give them a placement test over 7th grade algebra to see if they're good to go, like you said, for 8th grade, or do they need to repeat some of those standards and be placed back in a 7th grade class? And I think that this is a moment that parents get really upset because they have this guilt. Okay, I didn't teach what I needed to be taught. And now I got to go back into the workforce and I have no other choice. They've got to go back into the school system. Why didn't I cover these things? So that's why I think that's really important to discuss standards. So what is Common Core? Common Core is, as a teacher and as a parent, I can tell you Common Core is not bad. There's a lot of bad publicity on Common Core because it was developed by a lot of political officials and things like that. But just know that 41 states use Common Core. And so Common Core is just a set of standards. It's usually mostly for math and ELA at this point in time. But we do have standards, but we're not really tested over them in all states, but we do have standards for each subject and grade level. So it's just assuring that when the student graduates from high school, they have certain skills that they would need to complete those courses for college or maybe technicals. So a lot of times, how do I explain it in the best way? A lot of governors and political people were pressing that we needed Common Core, and that's how the politics got into it. But really the need was that we saw a lot of students that had remediation rates that were super high, especially in math. And so students across the board in the United States were not scoring very well on tests. And so we realized, okay, we have to have a set. This is what we're going to cover. Not all teachers are perfect teachers, right? And they have things going on in their life just like everyone else. And so they have to make sure that that teacher is teaching what they need to teach. And they were leaving it to the teachers to teach whatever they feel is needed. And that didn't always happen. And they may have been a little bit more playtime than needed, or art time and things like that. So that's why standards come into play. The rates for the United States of remediation were just really high. And so, yes, it was governors and representatives, but also what many homeschool families don't realize is that educational centers and teachers and parents were all on these committees to make this framework of what standards are. So these are evidence-based standards that we need for each grade level. They're aligned with what the career and college expectations are. They involve high order thinking. That means that it may say something like, I would like the student to model the solar system. I mean, they're going to make a solar system. They have studied that students, if they make it with their hands regarding that certain standard, they'll remember it. So those high order thinking skills are really key to your child's education. And we talked about this, just a lack of understanding, and especially during COVID, just the lack of value for teachers in general and academics was seen, and parents were not encouraging children that were at home, that were learning virtually, to do the assignments. And now we're seeing that students are behind in various grade levels. And so again, it's important to realize that each grade level and each subject has a standard, and we want to try to meet those standards. So I want you to think of standards as really a checklist. All right, this is what I need to teach for this grade. If your child was to need to move, if your child's moving from Virginia to Georgia, for example, and they're enrolling in a 5th grade classroom, they should step right in and be ready to go. And that's why the word common, meaning all across the board in the United States, this is what's going to be taught in this 5th grade classroom. And if you move from this state and go to this state, you're doing the same thing. So, home testing. So let's say that you pull your child out in the middle of the year. Now, you can start from the beginning of a curriculum program, or maybe you want to contact one of the online companies or a private company just to test and see if they've mastered certain standards. That way you're not having repetition of material that's already been taught and wasting any time. So we're going to go through a scenario, and I'm going to help you find the standards if you haven't worked on this before. So let's pretend we have a 6th grader, and we have pulled the child out, and we need to know what needs to be taught for 6th grade science. And that in Georgia, that would be earth science. And so here is an example of a standard. But what you do is you click, and again, this would be on your Department of Education website. And as you can see here, it has all of the science and other subject standards, but we're going to just look at 6 through 8. 6th grade. And so their focus for this grade is going to be these 6, and this is the pacing guide, and this kind of gives you an idea if you click it. And again, this would be all teachers for 6th grade earth science. This would be what they're following. And so you see right here, this is an 8-week program. So that would tell you the first 8 weeks of school, they're all studying the solar system. And this is the standard right here. That's the standard with the ESSA1. And here's a standard 2. So let's look at this one. 1B, the standard is the solar system, has a collection of objects, planets, moons, and asteroids. So that means the student needs to understand there is a solar system, and there's planets up there, and there's moons, and there's asteroids moving around. Okay. And you can look through and scroll through, but let me go back to it for you. And just letting you know that all Department of Education websites have tons of helpful links and videos and everything that homeschool parents can use. but this just kind of gives you a guide. And a lot of these are in place because there's students at home because of COVID. Here you go. Here's another standard, and it's explained a little bit more detail. You want them to be able to ask questions about the Earth's position. You want your child to understand if you were to ask them, hey, how many planets from the sun is Earth? And maybe they can ask you a question back. So that's all it really is. It's just giving you a basic, how can you do it? And if you'll look online, it will also provide you, okay, here's some questions you can ask your child. They may be some student handbooks and things like that. A lot of this is all online. You just have to look on your Department of Education website. But that's just the basics. So as you can see, the standard is not unreasonable at all. You just want the child to understand there is a solar system that has planets in it. So I don't want homeschooling to come as a surprise for you in these topics. So these are topics that parents get very, very mad about that they didn't know beforehand. So I want to make sure you know. So if your child currently has an IEP or a 504, those accommodations are lost when you withdraw them from the school. If the child re-enters the school, the process just has to begin again. And I know that's frustrating, but I want you to understand, I've been part of many 504 committees, and it takes a lot of people. You got to have a hearing test, you got to have an eye test, you got to have someone come in and do the official testing from the school system, you got to have it signed off by various people. So you can't go away and then come back and expect it all to be in place. So you would have to do retesting. You may have to have a letter from the pediatrician and things like that. Very doable, but just know that it could take 6 months to a year to reinstate. The school does not provide IEP or 504 accommodations at your home. They will not come out and provide that. Services like speech, occupational therapy, and physical therapy, those can be expensive, but a lot of times your health insurance will cover it. You just have to check. All curriculum's not alike, and free doesn't mean that it's always best. So you do need to kind of shop around for what works best for you. Getting accepted into college will require a little bit more paperwork than maybe you expected. And the parent has to kind of stay on top of when the deadlines are for the ACT and the SAT. Those are things that are normally done in the school. They might have on Tuesday, they're all going to take the SAT if they're 10th graders. And so you will be missing out on those little reminders. So just make sure that those are things that you add to your calendar. So we're going to talk a little bit about teacher education, and you may think, why in the world is she telling me this? But just hold on. So I want you to understand what a teacher goes through and how the standards are part of it. So before a teacher begins teaching, they're going to complete a 4-year education program with basic education classes like English 101, History 101, things like that. Child development classes, psychology classes, classroom management classes, ethics, and classes that specialize on their focused teaching area on the standards. So they are, if you're going to get middle school science degree, then you are going to study just those standards for middle school science. Just know there is a lot of time put into the standards and making sure that these teachers understand them really well, and they're going to be able to go out and teach them at the school system. And then, of course, all teachers complete a 6-month student teaching apprenticeship. When a teacher is ready to go into the classroom, they must pass state certification. That's around 2 to 3 tests, and it's with a program called the GACE. They must show an 80% competency in those standards. And then, of course, they go through a background check and fingerprints. Once in the classroom, employed teachers must complete yearly training on various topics to keep their teaching certificate valid. Those topics could be those standards broken apart. Maybe it's a solar system class that they're taking on how to have labs that will help students understand the standards that are involved in the solar system. They're going to have a yearly background check and agree to drug testing. They're going to have weekly data and curriculum meetings in their employed school. It's usually one day a week where they're going to sit down with other teachers. So if it was science, all the science teachers for 6th grade would sit down together and talk about the standards. So they're looking at how did my class score on the standards compared to your class? And if their class scored better, then you would say, okay, how did you approach it? What labs did you do so that next time maybe I need to try that? And then, of course, teachers are posting lesson plans weekly and completing 2 unannounced evaluations from an administrator and a curriculum director and 1 announced. And then the teacher is scored on how they performed in the classroom, if they're teaching the standards, and classroom management skills. Why in the world is this important to homeschool parents? It is because you have to realize you're now stepping into the position of a teacher. It's a large task. It's very doable because you know your child best and you know how to meet their needs best, but just realize that the responsibility is there to make sure that the standards are covered. So being a mom and dad kind of come natural to us, but just know that taking on the responsibility as a teacher will come with challenges, but it could be rewarding. You have to be prepared. Really, that's the answer. But you have to have a plan in place. And the plan is just organization and pre-planning. So our giant series on Google Advantage for homeschoolers talks about how can Google help me? So now you've got the basics, all right, how do I withdraw my child? How do I set up an area? Where are the standards at? Now you know how to get started. But now you've got the material, how do you use it? So Google can help you in many, many ways, and a lot of homeschoolers are not familiar at all. So Gmail. First thing, go ahead and sign your child up and get them a free Gmail account. And I would suggest trying to just use their full name or initials or something like that so that they can use this Gmail for years and years. But this is important because in the school system, in order to access programs like MobyMax, iExcel, Epic Books, things that are very helpful for homeschoolers, they're going to need an email address. And so they've lost that school email address they were using to log in, so they will need a Gmail. Google's Docs, Sheets, and Slides, they can use that for assignments. And if you pulled your child out of the school system, they've already had experience. We have 2nd graders that know how to use Google Docs. So this is just a way to show their work. And Google Forms is going to be your best friend. That is how you create tests and surveys and things like that. And then Google Sites is almost like an electronic lesson plan book. It's a place for you to store your lesson plans and maybe for your child to go there and look at it. So let me take you over. Let's stop sharing. And I want to show you an example of a Google Sites page that I created. So here we are, we're on Google Sites, and how you find it is, we call this the Rubik's Cube. It's right there to the top right beside the profile picture, you will find 9 little dots. You click it, that's where you find your Gmail, Docs, and everything that you need, and you'll find Google Sites. So Google Sites looks similar to this. So this one is one I made for physical science. You can do the same. This is the book that my child was using. And so what I did was I broke apart, as you see here, let's just click chapter 5. And it does require a little bit of organization beforehand, but it is well worth it. So I wrote out what key terms he needs to write down, which definitions he needs to define. I wanted him to make note cards over it. And then I'm letting him know I want him to read those pages and complete the review questions at the end. I searched on YouTube and I found a bunch of free videos that I thought were the most helpful on the topic, and I added them in, and it's very easy. Just pull over the text box and you pull over the embed. And I also offer classes just on how to create a Google Sites. So if you are interested in that, please sign up for that. but it's just really easy and it has everything there. And then now he knows, okay, now Tuesday, I'm going to read these pages. I'm going to watch this video. And then Wednesday, I'm going to read these pages. And then at the end of the week, I can test him over it. And if I make a test, and that's something also I cover on how to make tests in Quizlet or maybe use Google Forms, but I just put it right here at the bottom of the site. This is super helpful for parents that travel a lot and they don't want to take everything with them. They're just taking the computer. So they've planned out what the child needs and whatever class they need, and they put it all in Google Sites. They can just go to it and work. And then they can submit work to you using their Gmail account. I hope that this class has helped you. We have more parent classes at our link here, and I hope you sign up. And I'd love to hear back from you and see if this was helpful. And I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bye.